All's quiet now, the doctor said. I'll see to the wounded.
Jim and I will make something to eat,
the squire volunteered. We cooked outside in the hot sun, trying not to listen to the loud groans from the doctor's patients. Of the 8 men who had fallen in the action, only 3 still breathed. Hunter, Captain Smollett, and one of the pirates shot by the doctor. The pirate died within hours. Hunter never regained consciousness and died the following day. The captain was luckier.
Job Anderson's bullet broke your shoulder blade and nicked your lung, but not badly,
the doctor told him.
The second bullet tore some calf muscles, but you'll recover. For the next few weeks, don't walk or move your arm if you can help it.
After eating, the squire and the doctor sat and talked beside the captain for a while. A little past noon, Dr. Livesey grabbed his hat and pistols, strapped on a cutlass, and put the map in his pocket. With a musket over his shoulder, he crossed the north side of the fence and set off briskly through the trees. Gray took his pipe out of his mouth when he saw the doctor go and said,
"Is Dr. Livesey mad?"
"No,"
I replied.
"He's the sanest person I know."
"Well,"
Gray said,
"if he's not insane, then I am. I just saw him climb over the stockade."
"He's probably going to see Ben Gunn,"
I said.
"It's too bad Mr. Gunn wants people to come alone. The doctor is enjoying the cool woods while we're roasting inside this stockade. I hate the stink of blood and all these dead bodies around."
"Help me wash out the house,"
Gray said. We scrubbed the blood off the floor, and I also washed the cookware, but my disgust only grew stronger. I wanted to leave, but I knew they wouldn't let me go. So I decided to wait and slip out when nobody was watching. But I needed a good reason to leave my friends.
"I'll go find Ben Gunn's boat,"
I told myself. I filled my pockets with biscuits so I wouldn't be hungry, and I took 2 pistols, gunpowder, and some bullets. While the squire and Gray helped the captain with his bandages, I bolted over the fence and into the trees. Before anyone noticed, I was far away.
"I'll head east so the pirates won't see me from the anchorage, and then I'll go south,"
I thought as I snuck through the tall woods. By late afternoon, I had come to the cool beach and was walking alongside the tumbling surf. When I was far enough south, I took cover in thick bushes and crept warily up a ridge near a bit of sandy land sticking out from the shore. I was right between the sea and the anchorage, which was protected from the force of the ocean by Skeleton Island. The Hispaniola was still and quiet, floating on an unbroken mirror of water, with the Jolly Roger hanging from her mast. I saw a familiar pirate sitting in a shore boat alongside the ship, talking and laughing with 2 men leaning over the ship's stern.
"Long John Silver,"
I whispered to myself. They were much too far away for me to overhear or see them clearly, but all at once I heard the most horrid, unearthly screaming.
"What's that?"
I thought, startled. But then I spotted the bright plumage of a bird perching on Long John's wrist.
"Oh, it's just the parrot,"
I sighed. Long John shoved off in the boat and rowed for shore. The 2 other pirates, one was the man with the red cap, stayed on the ship and went below. The sun set behind Spyglass Hill, fog rose, and the light began to fade.
"I must hurry if I'm going to find Ben Gunn's boat,"
I told myself.
"It's going to get dark soon."
The white rock, visible above the trees, was about 200 yards away, and I crawled on all 4s among the bushes. By the time I touched the rock's rough sides, the area was hard to see clearly, but right below in a ditch was Ben Gunn's boat. It was a very small, crooked structure of tough wood covered with stretched goatskin.
"I can't imagine a full-size man in this,"
I muttered. There was one low seat, a kind of stretcher in the front, and a double paddle for propulsion. I had never seen such a boat. It looked as if it had been made by some ancient seaman, but it was light and portable. After having found Ben Gunn's boat, I should have returned to the stockade, but suddenly I had a great idea.
"I'll cut the Hispaniola adrift,"
I said to myself. The pirates, after the morning's disastrous attack, might pull up the anchor and sail away.
Long John left his men on the ship without a shore boat.
I thought.
It'll be easy. The fog is covering everything. Tonight will be perfect for my plan.
I ate my biscuit and waited for dark. As daylight disappeared and absolute blackness settled over Treasure Island, I picked up Ben Gunn's boat. Only 2 points were visible on the landscape. One was the Great Fire, where the pirates were drinking in the swamp. And the other was a mere blur of light in the dark fog, the anchored ship's cabin window. The tide was out, and I sank in swampy sand to my ankles before I got to the water's edge. Wading in, and with some strength and skill, I set Ben Gunn's boat in the water. Ben Gunn's boat, I soon discovered, was a very safe boat for a person my size. It was quite buoyant, but crooked and difficult to manage. Even Ben Gunn himself had admitted the boat was hard to handle until you got used to it. The boat turned every direction but the one I wanted to go, and most of the time I went sideways. But fortunately, as I paddled, the tide swept me along, and soon the Hispaniola loomed right in front of me, pitch black in the darkness. Slowly, I saw her spars, the poles supporting the rigging, and the hull take shape. The closer I got to the ship, the faster the current grew. Soon, I was alongside the ship and next to the thick, twined rope of the anchor line. I grabbed hold.
A few cuts with my pocket knife and the Hispaniola will float out with the tide,
I said to myself. Then, I noticed how tightly stretched the anchor line was.
The tension is so tight, it's like a bowstring,
I thought.
If I cut this line when the ship is pulling so hard against the anchor, my boat and I could be knocked clean out of the water. It's too dangerous.
But then, a light wind started blowing from the southwest. The wind caught the Hispaniola, and the ship shifted position just a bit. I felt the anchor line go limp in my grasp, and decided to go ahead and cut the rope. I took out my pocket knife, opened it with my teeth, and cut one thick strand after another. Soon, the vessel was held in place by only 2 strands, which had tightened up once more.
When the rope becomes loose again,
I said to myself,
I'll cut these last strands.
While I waited for a good gust of wind, someone opened a window in the stern. Something was thrown out, and it splashed in the water. An empty bottle, probably.
You stupid swab!
One man shouted.
I deserve a bigger share of the money!
I recognized the voice of Israel Hands, and deduced that he was the other pirate left on the ship with Redcap. The name I started calling the man in the red nightcap. They were drunk and arguing.
You're a dog!
Redcap shouted back.
You won't get any more!
The men argued and cursed at each other.
They'll be trying to kill each other soon,
I thought. But they quieted down again and drank some more. Meanwhile, on shore, the glow of the great campfire burned warmly through the trees. Someone was singing an old sailor song.
But one of her crew was still alive, of the ship that sailed with 75.
At last, another strong breeze came and the ship shifted. I felt the rope go limp once more, and with a good, tough effort, I cut the last thick strands. The ship began to turn, spinning slowly across the current. I paddled furiously to avoid being flooded by the ship's wake, but I couldn't get out of the way of the huge turning danger.
Lord, save me!
I prayed as I lay down flat in the bottom of my little boat. All I could think of was being crushed on the jagged rocks.
I'm going to die!
I cried as I shut my eyes tight. I must have lain in Ben Gunn's boat for hours, beaten to and fro by the waves, drenched with the flying ocean spray, and expecting death at every moment. Gradually, weariness and numbness overtook me, and I fell asleep in my sea-tossed little boat. I dreamed of home and the old Admiral Benbow. I awoke and found myself still tossing in the sea. The sun was rising behind Spyglass Hill, and from my perspective, I could see one side of the hill descending into the sea. This side of Spyglass was bare, with cliffs about 50 feet high and fallen rocks spilling into the ocean at its base. I was about a quarter of a mile out at sea, and my first thought was to paddle in, but I soon gave up that idea.
Just look at those huge waves crashing on the rocks,
I said to myself.
I'll be dashed to pieces. Even if I could make it through the waves, I'd die trying to climb the cliffs. I'll never reach land,
I cried, frightened. But the boat instantly righted itself among the surging waves.
I mustn't panic,
I told myself.
If I don't disturb the boat's balance, I can paddle over one side in between swells.
It was slow and tiring work, but I made progress. Then, suddenly, I saw a familiar sight. Not half a mile away, the Hispaniola was sailing north.
Nobody's steering,
I realized.
If I can board the ship, I can return it to the captain. And there's drinking water on board. I can taste it already.
The thought of a cool drink motivated me to try to reach the ship, so I sat up and started paddling. I had to stop and bail water out of the boat occasionally, but I swiftly learned to glide through the waves with only occasional blasts of water and foam hitting me in the face. But within moments, a huge swell rose up underneath me, and the ship's bowsprit was right over my head. Without thinking, I leaped. I grabbed onto the long pole sticking out from the front of the ship with one hand and wedged my foot between two ropes. As I clung there, panting, a dull and sickening thud told me that the ship had struck and crushed Ben Gunn's boat. I was saved, but now I had no way to get off the Hispaniola. I barely climbed onto the bowsprit when a sail filled up with another breeze and flapped sharply, sounding like a gunshot. The sail almost hit me, nearly tossing me into the sea. Quickly, I crawled along the bowsprit and tumbled headfirst onto the deck. From where I landed, I couldn't see anyone, but the deck, not cleaned since the mutiny, was dirty with footprints. A broken bottle tumbled to and fro. Suddenly, the Hispaniola went right into the wind, and the whole ship shuddered with a horrible sound. At the same moment, the mainsail boomed, groaned, and swung aside, and that's when I saw the two pirates. Redcap was stiff and flat on his back, with his arms stretched out like a cross. Nearby, Israel Hands was leaning against a barrel, his chin on his chest, his hands lying open before him on the deck, and his face deathly white. The ship kept rising and falling, turning this way and that, as the boom swung to and fro, and the mast groaned loudly under the strain. Blasts of sea spray occasionally drenched the deck, and the men's bodies swayed with every movement of the ship. The deck was stained with splashes of dark blood.
Have they killed each other?
I wondered. Suddenly, Israel Hands turned and moaned with pain. His jaw was hanging open, and I felt pity for him, until I remembered he had planned to kill us.
Are you all right, Mr. Hands?
I asked, keeping my distance.
Get me some brandy,
He croaked, as he rolled his eyes to try and focus them.
He may be dying,
I thought. I raced down the stairs to the captain's cabin.
What have they done?
I gasped as I looked at the mess in the cabin. Anything that had been locked was broken open in the pirates' search for the map. Mud covered the floor where they'd sat drinking. The white walls were smeared with dirty handprints, and dozens of empty bottles clinked together in the corners. The doctor's medical book lay open on the table, half of the pages torn out.
They probably used the pages to light their pipes,
I thought in disgust as the lamp still cast its smoky glow. I went into the galley. The barrels were gone, and empty bottles were lying everywhere.
They were drunk the whole time,
I said. I found a bottle with some brandy left, and discovered some biscuits, pickled fruits, cheese, and a bunch of raisins. I came on deck, went to the water supply, and had a good deep drink. Then I gave Israel Hands the brandy bottle. The pirate gulped all he could.
Aye, by thunder,
He said.
I needed some brandy.
I sat down and ate.
Are you hurt much?
I asked.
If that doctor was aboard,
Growled the pirate.
I'd be all right. But I have no luck.
He pointed to Redcap.
That swab is good and dead.
Then he looked at me.
And where did you come from?
I'm taking possession of this ship, Mr. Hands.
I said.
Please regard me as your captain until further notice.
He looked at me angrily, but said nothing.
I don't like your flag, Mr. Hands.
I told him. I ran and pulled down their black flag and threw it overboard.
God save the king!
I yelled.
Captain Silver has lost!
The pirate watched me slyly, his chin on his chest.
I reckon, Captain Hawkins,
He said at last.
you'll want to get ashore now. Let's talk.
Why, yes.
I replied.
With all my heart, Mr. Hands. Talk on.
I sat down again and continued eating.
I and this man,
He began, nodding at the corpse.
we put the sails up to get her back to the island. Well, he's dead now. So who will sail the ship? You can't. You're just a boy. Now, if you give me food and drink and an old handkerchief to tie up my wound, I'll tell you how to sail her. That's fair, I think.
I won't go back to Captain Kidd's anchorage.
I said.
I'm going to North Inlet and we'll beach the ship there.
I know I lost, and you have the better of me.
Admitted the pirate.
North Inlet? Fine. I'd help you sail up to Execution Dock if you asked me. By thunder.
Good.
I said confidently.
We have a deal then.
Suddenly, his tone changed.
That's enough of this nonsense.
He declared.
The tide's low enough. Take my orders, Captain Hawkins, and we'll sail in and be done with it.
Navigation was delicate and tricky, but Israel Hands was an excellent pilot.
We'll beach her there.
He pointed.
It's fine, flat sand. No wind, with trees all around. Get ready now, boy. We're near the beach. Steer right a little. Steady. Right. Steady. Steady. Now, my lad.
He commanded.
Sail the bow into the wind.
I swung the Hispaniola around rapidly and pointed her bow toward the wooded shore. I was so busy I'd almost forgotten my danger, but a sudden uneasiness seized me and I turned my head. Mr. Hands was coming at me with the dagger in his right hand. I screamed, and he roared like a charging bull as he jumped toward me. I leaped away, letting go of the wheel, which struck him sharply across the chest. I ran to the main mast, drew a pistol from my pocket, and took aim. I pulled the trigger, but nothing happened.
The gunpowder's wet.
I cursed.
Not your lucky day, Jim.
Laughed the pirate. Though wounded, Hands moved fast. Using the main mast as a shield, I waited, every nerve tingling. He came at me from one side of the mast and then the other as I dodged back and forth. Just then, the Hispaniola struck the beach, shuddered, and tipped to one side until the deck stood at a 45-degree angle. Both of us fell over, rolling almost together, with the body of Redcap tumbling after us. I got up first, but I had no place to run, so I sprang up onto the rigging, climbing hand over hand.
Your luck has run out, Jim?
Yelled Hands as he threw the dagger at me. It missed, but I didn't stop to breathe until I reached the crosspiece on the mast. I quickly changed the gunpowder in one pistol and started to reload the other. Israel Hands pulled himself into the ropes with a groan, retrieved the dagger, and put it between his teeth. Then, slowly and painfully, he began to climb. I finished reloading when he was about a third of the way up. With a pistol in each hand, I shouted,
One more step, Mr. Hands, and I'll blow your brains out! Dead men don't bite, you know.
I added with a chuckle. His eyebrows rose, and he stopped.
Ha ha!
I laughed. The pirate took the dagger from his mouth.
Jim,
He said,
I reckon we'll have to make a deal. I'd have killed you if that ship hadn't beached just then. Bad luck for me again.
As he spoke, his right hand went back over his shoulder. Then, something sang like an arrow through the air, and I felt a blow and then a sharp sting. He had pinned my shoulder to the mast with his dagger. In the horrible pain and surprise of the moment, and without my intention, both my pistols went off and fell from my hands. They didn't fall alone. With a choked cry, Israel's hands fell off the ropes and plunged headfirst into the water. Oddly enough, my shuddering helped. The knife, which I thought had stuck me to the mast so securely, had really almost missed me completely. I was held to the mast only by a mere pinch of skin, and my shudder tore it away. Blood ran down my back faster, but I was free. I pulled my coat and shirt away, moved to the opposite side of the ship, and climbed down on that side. Nothing could make me go down the ropes above where Israel had fallen. I went below deck and did what I could for my wound. I was in pain, but the wound was neither deep nor dangerous, nor did it bother me too much to use my arm. Back up on the top deck, I looked around and saw Redcap. He was leaning against the side of the ship like some horrible life-size puppet.
He looks easier to move now,
I said to myself. After what I had been through, another dead body didn't bother me, so I grabbed his belt and with one good heave, threw him overboard. He went in with a splash, but his red cap came off and remained floating in the water. The evening breeze started whistling softly through the rope lines and rattled the sails.
The wind may be a danger to the ship,
I thought. I was able to get the front sails down, but the mainsail was too difficult to manage. When the ship tipped, the mainsail had swung out so that now a foot or two of the sail was underwater. I got my knife and cut the lines that usually raise and lower the sail, and the loose canvas dropped instantly into the water.
Now both the Hispaniola and I must hope for a little luck,
I said. I suddenly realized the sun had set and the air was getting chilly, so I let myself drop softly overboard. The water barely reached my waist, and I waded ashore as the breeze whistled low among the pines. I wanted to get to my friends and boast that I had recaptured the ship single-handedly.
Even Captain Smollett will admit I'm resourceful and brave.
I thought.
He may even want to give me a medal or something.
I laughed out loud at that. In high spirits, I set out for the stockade, and before long, I was near the hill where I'd first encountered Ben Gunn. In the distance, I could see a glow against the sky, and thought Ben Gunn was cooking his supper.
Why is he so careless?
I wondered.
If I can see his fire, so can Long John.
Gradually, the night became darker. I kept tripping over tree roots and stumbling into sand pits, until the moon finally rose and gave me some light. I continued walking, sometimes running impatiently to the stockade.
I must stay alert,
I thought.
I don't want my friends to shoot me by mistake.
As the moon climbed higher, the glow appeared among the trees again. This time, the fire resembled the red-hot embers of a smoldering bonfire somewhere near the stockade. By the time I reached the fence, I saw the remains of what must have been an immense fire at the side of the house.
Did something go wrong while I was absent?
I wondered. I climbed the fence, got on my hands and knees, and crawled without a sound toward the corner of the house. As I drew near, I heard my friends snoring, peaceful in their sleep, and the unpleasant noises sounded like music to me.
If Long John was creeping in on them like this, my friends would all be dead by daybreak,
I said to myself.
I shouldn't have left them with so few men remaining to guard the house.
I crept in.
I should lie down in my usual place,
I thought with a chuckle.
and enjoy the looks on their faces when they find me in the morning.
My foot struck a sleeper's leg, and he turned and groaned, but didn't wake. And then, suddenly, a shrill voice screamed from the darkness.
Pieces of 8! Pieces of 8! Pieces of 8!
Long John's parrot!
I whispered. My body froze with fear as the sleepers awoke and jumped up,
Who goes there?
roared Long John Silver. I turned to run, slammed violently against one person, jumped back, and ran into the arms of the second man. He held me tight as I struggled against his grip.
Bring a torch, Dick,
said Long John. One of the pirates left the log house and returned with a long piece of burning wood.